Hello everyone! I might sound a little bit tired in this video, but that's just because, if you haven't heard by now, the FAA released a proposal on remote identification and all the requirements that go with that, and it caused quite the stir on the internet. And I've probably made way more comments on social media in the past few days than I probably ever have in my entire life, and it's been a little bit exhausting. So if you haven't kept up with what's going on or you haven't heard about this proposal yet, I'll try to do my best to give you a really quick recap here. And since this is probably going to be a long, boring rant, I'll try to borrow something out of Kebab's playbook and put up some flight footage for you to enjoy while you listen to this. So you don't have to just listen to my voice talking about these regulations, you can watch my flight video instead. So what is this remote ID proposal from the FAA? Well, basically it says there are two ways you can comply with remote ID, and then they throw in this third unacceptable option to catch everything else. The highest level is called standard remote ID, and basically that requires your drone to both broadcast a remote ID and, if it can, send your remote ID information over the internet. And remote ID information is things like your drone's altitude, its longitude, its latitude, and its serial number or a unique identifier of some sort. And also the same is true for the operator. It has to send the coordinates of the operator to the remote ID service provider. Oh, and by the way, those service providers are likely to charge you a monthly fee to use their service. The other option is you can try to qualify for the limited remote ID, and drones that qualify for limited remote ID are not allowed to broadcast their remote ID information, but they must send their the remote ID information over an internet connection. And another limitation of this is that they can't travel more than 400 feet in any direction from the operator. And actually, I believe the drones must refuse or stop at 400 feet and not allow themselves to go any farther away from you. And so then there's this final option for any drones that don't have remote identification in them, and that's that community-based organizations such as the AMA or maybe the FPV Freedom Coalition could ask the FAA to approve a flying location like the AMA's existing runways and flight fields. The FAA could then say, okay, yes, those approved locations are fine. You can fly there. You don't have to have remote ID. But this document does go into great detail to say that this is basically a temporary fix and that they think in the near future that all flying RC aircraft will have remote ID in them, and therefore these approved flying locations can go away. So someone like the AMA only has 12 months to request from the FAA that their flying fields are approved flying locations, and then after those 12 months, so after that 1 year, you cannot request any new locations, and the FAA just believes that over time those locations will disappear. So I think, that's a big deal for even AMA pilots, but I think I'll get into that more in more detail later. So I would really encourage everyone. I know it's a giant 300 plus page document, but really there's a lot of stuff repeated over and over and over in it, so you can kind of skim through some of it, but definitely try to take a look and read as many of those 300 pages as you can. But if you don't want to, or if you'd like to get a primer ahead of time before you start reading all of those pages, I'd suggest that you go take a look at the FPV Freedom Coalition's website, where there's a 6-page guide that you can read where the FPV Freedom Coalition has tried to distill this down into the most important information that you can fit onto about 6 pages. And there's also an FAQ on the website with about, at this time, maybe 20 questions, 20 of the most popular questions people have been asking, and some answers to those. So, at this point, you're probably wondering, why should I care? How does this affect me? Well, this affects all of us. Doesn't matter if you're a model flyer, a racer, a camera drone operator, a freestyler. There are plenty of restrictions in this document that everyone will find absolutely unacceptable. There's plenty of misconceptions about this proposal out there as well. A lot of people think, oh yeah, remote ID, no big deal. I'll just buy some small transponder device that'll comply with the regulations. I'll stick it on my drone and everything will be good to go. But from my understanding of this document, that is basically not true. Sure, there are some provisions in there that say, yes, if you build your own model aircraft, you build your own drone from parts, you'll be allowed to fly. Well, the limitations on that basically say you'll be able to fly at those AMA or those FRIAs, those approved flying locations. But again, that's only a temporary fix according to the FAA. And none of the FPV pilots that I know, myself included, want to be limited to just flying in AMA fields. There's nothing all that fun or exciting about flying there. And if you continue to read all of the requirements, if you want to comply with remote ID under those standard or limited, you basically can't build your own from parts. You have to be a approved manufacturer. You have to jump through all kinds of hoops that the FAA has thrown out there. You have to pay to download some documents. You have to be approved by the FAA. You have to apply to them. You have to willingly allow the FAA to inspect your production. It's basically written for corporations like DJI to request the FAA that, yes, okay, here's our list of drones, here's the ones that comply with these requirements, and things like that. It is not designed so that amateurs or model builders or drone builders, hobbyists like myself, could ever possibly meet all these meet all of those rules and get our drones to qualify. So you also might be thinking, oh, I'm an AMA member. I fly fixed wing model aircraft at a field, so I'll be fine. There's no issues there, right? Well, like I mentioned a little bit before, there are still plenty of issues there. The FAA in this document definitely states that they believe the fixed flying sites like the FRIAs are a temporary, and that after a few years, all aircraft will be compliant with remote ID, and those locations can go away. And I just don't think that's true. Lots of AMA members fly their same aircraft for many, many, many years and are going to want to continue to do that. And I know there's a large subset of you out there who say, well, I don't care. I'm just going to ignore these regulations. It's not going to affect me anyway. And you are possibly correct. Yeah, you can ignore it. You can still go out and fly your drones just like you always have. But over time, fewer and fewer people are going to be in this hobby. I've already seen many people say, oh, should I sell all my equipment? Or I was just looking at getting into FPV, but then I saw these regulations. I don't know that I want to get into this anymore. And that scares a lot of people away. And if there's fewer and fewer people in this hobby, there's going to be fewer and fewer companies making parts. There's going to be less and less innovation. And there's not going to be it's not going to be as fun. There's not going to be the cool new things. Maybe someone like DJI would never have invested the money into making the HD equipment. Maybe Bite Frost would never become a thing. It's really hard to predict, but I think even if you ignore this, you're still affected by it in one way or another. And let's say, okay, so I'm not in the United States, so why should I care about this? Well, remote ID is intended to be a global standard. And actually, there's an ASTM group that worked on a global standard for this, which for whatever reason the FAA mostly decided to ignore. But it is definitely intended to be a global standard, and that remote ID will be coming to all countries all across the world eventually. And a lot of times, other countries see what the United States is doing and copy them, just like the United States sees what Europe is doing, and they tend to copy those regulations as well. All right, so maybe I've sufficiently scared you, and now you're wondering, all right, what can I do about it? Well, it remains to be seen if we can make a difference or not, but we have to try. One thing you can do is join the FPVFC Facebook group and the Discord server. Join in on the conversation, participate, talk with friends, share this information, come up with solutions, stay up to date. Did I say that already? And stay up to date with what's going on. And use this next 60 days to formulate your response to the FAA's proposed regulation. The FPVFC is going to be working on their own response. They're going to want feedback from all of us. The FPVFC is going to probably produce some documents with suggestions for how you can respond and topics you might want to bring up in your response. And I would also like to say that if you have any kind of a personal story, I've read quite a few of them out there online, your personal story on how FPV may have helped you or saved your life or give you hope and all kinds of great stories out there, make sure you write that down and use that in your response. Another thing I'd suggest is just continue sharing your thoughts on this and make sure all of your RC flying friends know about this. The more people out there that are informed and know what the facts are, the more people that will hopefully respond to this, and hopefully the FAA won't be able to ignore us. If you want to take this another step further, consider becoming an FPVFC paid member, or make a PayPal donation to them, or go buy one of the t-shirts that are for sale. I'll just point out that there's one really awesome t-shirt for sale there that I may have designed. So if you want, go buy that one and wear it, show it in video, show it in photos, make sure people see it. And finally, I just want to say, if you have any questions about this proposal, let me know and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you.